Hey, Gator Nation. Welcome to episode 4 of Pod of the People. We are the Respect Our Decision crew. I am Hirsch, as always. With me is Wes.
What's good, Getting Nation?
And CJ the Man McCann.
What's going on?
Hey, guys, if this is your first time tuning in, this is our weekly show where we answer the questions that you guys send in to us. And then we end it with our community question that we post every week. A different revolving question every week that we get y'all's feedback on, whether it be this week's question, the what if for college football, or last week's question, the 4 great running backs in SEC history. I mean, we rotated each and every week with something new and fresh for us to talk about and get y'all's interactions. And we appreciate y'all's responses, man. This is great. We do this just to interact with the fans, and we really appreciate it. So as always, guys, if you're watching us on YouTube, this is the only place you will find this show. Make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you get a notification every time we drop a new video here on the YouTube. We appreciate it. Make sure you give a like to the video. It helps us a ton. And drop us a comment or drop us a question for next week's show. And we'll read it and we'll recognize you on the show. So without further ado, guys, we're going to jump right into it. Wes, what's our first question this week, man?
All right. First question is from Justin Wood. Justin said, "Do you think at this point the Gator will just promote David Doker to wide receiver coach? And how long do you think they're taking? And what are you guys' prediction for how the spring game goes?" Well, let's answer the first part. One of you guys can handle that.
Yes, sir, guys. If Justin, as always, thanks, man. You are so awesome at responding on Twitter and Facebook. You always leave us comments. We appreciate it. You are the man. If you've listened to our main show by the time this is out, you already know the Gators have hired Billy Gonzalez. Probably made the hire official right after you posted the question, as a matter of fact. And us here at Respect Our Decision, we love the hire. I mean, we're not like, oh my God, this is the best hire you could ever make, but we're good with the hire. We think it's a solid hire. Billy Gonzalez resume speaks for itself as far as development of receivers. And I thought that I'll let CJ give his thoughts on Doker, though, as far as what we think the Gators are doing there. CJ?
I kind of brought this up in the pod, the main show. But it seems like to me that you didn't want to hire a really young coach because you already have Doker waiting in the wings. So you hired a guy like Billy Gonzalez who can kind of be like the stopgap. You know, you'll see this from time to time, liken it to like the NFL. Like they'll draft a rookie, but they'll bring in somebody like an Andy Dalton or a Joe Flacco or somebody like that to kind of go in front of him, who's a solid enough guy who can still get it done and does a good job, but he's not going to be around much longer. And he can also kind of take the younger guy under his wing and kind of groom him to be the next, wide receivers coach now. I think that's kind of what the mindset with hiring Billy Gonzalez is like you look at Billy Gonzalez as a guy who's probably got a lot more years behind him than he does in front of him. We're not going to see Billy Gonzalez coaching the wide receivers here for the next 10 years. It's not going to happen. He's, too much. He's been in the game too long. He probably isn't going to coach full time much longer. So I think that was another reason the hire was made, was to kind of keep Doker in the camp, give him another mentor to learn from. He's already sat under Kerry Colbert's tree. Now he's getting to sit under Billy Gonzalez, and then you've got Billy Napier there, of course, who was a fantastic wide receivers coach in his own right. So you've got 3 guys that he's been able to kind of pick the brains of, and by the time he gets ready to make that step, he'll be the best prepared for it as we could probably make him, if that's what the move we want to make. Or it might be another thing where he might take off and go take a wide receiver coach job at, let's say, UAB, and then he can come back around to Florida. So you've planted the seeds where you've got a coaching tree that can go out and maybe come back around. And I think that Billy Gonzalez is going to help kind of groom Doker to be a wide receiver coach.
And we mentioned this on the main show as well, that we believe, you not only have Billy Gonzalez helping with Doker, you also have Billy Napier, who was a wide receiver coach himself, also helping with the development of Doker. So, I mean, two great minds for the young man to learn under at this time can only do wonders for him. So that's pretty much all we really know about that situation. But thank you as always, Justin. Wes, what was the other part of his question?
Yeah, he said, what are you guys' prediction for the spring game, and do you think we will see fireworks on April 13th?
I mean, it's always tough to say about the fireworks as far as recruiting goes. Could we? Absolutely. If DJ's there for that game and he's recruiting kids and somebody gets caught up in the moment, oh man, you could absolutely see fireworks. It just, you got to wait and kind of see what the visitor list looks like and who's seriously considering us at that time. I mean, I think you could see one of those of Boatwright or Kendall Jackson probably go any time from now to then. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. Or it could be a surprise kid. I mean, it's, sometimes kids just get caught up in that excitement and are ready to make that move. As far as the spring game, man, I really, really couldn't tell you. I think you're just going to try to see Billy's going to get those two quarterbacks, being Miller and Mertz, out there, and a little Max Brown, I'm sure too, out there just running the full offense, trying to see which each brings to the table. And I'm really honestly, I'm more excited to watch the defense and under the new, coordinator and see how some of these younger guys play in this defense. CJ?
I'm looking at the tight end spot is kind of my main point of I want to see, like, in the spring game, because of where the tight end play was last year. I want to see how it evolves. We've got a new tight ends coach now. We've got a kid like Arliss Boardingham who's like been lighting it up in practice. I mean, he's a kid that everybody's talked about. This kid is an athlete. He's a freak. He's a go up and get it kind of guy. I want to see that. I want to see all these guys that have been working in the tight end room kind of make the next step. And I think the spring game could probably show us a little bit of that, next step that they're going to take. Because I feel like the tight end position really needs to step up this year to help everything else on the offense.
Yeah, somewhat to what Hirsch was saying about the defense. I want to see the linebackers. All new faces there. I mean, we had some guys that played last year, but Bernie and Miller gone. I want to see who's out there, what they're doing, how they're moving, how they're getting off blocks. I want to see how those linebackers look, and the safeties as well. I want to see those two new faces back there as well, with Torrance and Dean gone. So I want to see the second level, the backers and the safeties, and making sure they're where they're supposed to be as well. And I can't lie, if I had to go one offensive guy, I want to see Andy Jean. So that's
Speaking of the linebackers, I should have mentioned this during our main show, but I've heard nothing but good feedback about Tejada Mitchell and his leadership of those linebackers in the defense since he's gotten on campus. That he's picked up the scheme very quickly and is quarterbacking the defense already. So that's what you want to hear out of a player like that.
Next question is from Byron Holden. He said, where do you think Anthony Richardson goes in the NFL draft?
Whew, that's a tough one.
Team-wise, or are we talking team-wise or position? Like
team-wise.
Team-wise?
Probably pick-wise is what he ultimately means. Man, that's a tough one. I've heard that Frank Wright loves Anthony Richardson in Carolina. I've heard the Texans secretly really love Anthony Richardson. I don't know. I think the Seahawks is the best situation for him.
Definitely.
But are two teams going to hold their water before it before it gets to them?
Yeah, that's the one thing. It's going to be as the Carolina Panthers go.
So goes the draft.
Yep. So you're going to see if they take Stroud, then you drop down to Houston, and I'm thinking Houston probably wants a quarterback. I don't think they think that Davis Mills is their quarterback of the future. So then you look at, do they want to take Anthony Richardson? I don't think they would. I think they'll take Bryce Young if they get that spot. Then you've also thrown Levis into the mix. I've heard the Colts really like Levis. So you could see that. I would personally, the best situation for Anthony Richardson would be the Seahawks. I could definitely see them taking Anthony Richardson. I could see the Raiders taking Anthony Richardson as another potential team. They've always been pretty upfront about like loving guys with a big arm who are just the best
And
athlete on the board.
athletic
And
ability.
Josh McDaniel, he gave Tim Tebow the chance when he was at Denver. So I mean, I could definitely see them, and that would also be a pretty good spot for Anthony because then he gets to go and he sits behind Jimmy G for a few years. Any place that Anthony can go and sit and learn and take a couple years with an offensive-minded coach, I think would be best for him. I wouldn't want to see him get thrown in a position having to start day one in a Carolina, or especially not the Texans, because the Texans just don't have all the pieces yet. So I would like to see that. But, I mean, there is a lot of traction behind Anthony Richardson going number one to the Panthers. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw it. You know, there's just sometimes GMs and coaches, they look at a guy who's just a freak of nature athlete, and they're like, I don't know what.
They don't want to be the guy that passes
Right.
on that talent.
Like, you don't want to be the guy like years down the road that's sitting there
That drafted
saying,
Sam Bowie.
or you don't want to be that, or you don't want to be the guy that drafted Mitch Trubisky instead of Lamar Jackson, right? So that's kind of where it's at. I think that it's just going to be the mindset thing. I think Stroud probably goes. If you ask me right now, I think Stroud goes number one. But I could definitely see Anthony going number one to the Panthers.
I'd love to see Anthony with Pete Carroll.
Definitely.
I think Pete Carroll is the best coach to handle that situation.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. To sit behind Geno Smith too, that would really help him.
Yep. Yeah, to echo you guys' point, I think Seattle or Las Vegas, where you can sit behind either Geno or Jimmy. Both of those guys, I think, signed 3-year contracts the other day. So to sit behind them would be good. If not, if he goes before that, then I think he's going to the Colts. That will be if he doesn't go to the Colts, then like you guys said, Seattle would be the perfect position for him. Next question from Jay Stubbins. He says, do you think it's possible that maybe Callaway was brought up to call plays since he has already called them before, if Napier decides to give it up or just delegate everything?
Billy's not giving up play calling.
I
just don't think it's happening. And if the day comes that he does that, I don't think it's Callaway. I don't think that's the guy that unseats him. Now, I'm not going to say that Callaway may not sit in on, on the meetings and have, hey, here's a little wrinkle that we could put in. But at the end of the day, Billy's not giving up play calling. It's just not happening. I know a lot of people want it to happen. I get it. I get it from the responsibility standpoint, where Billy's got so much on his plate and he needs to free himself up. But that's just not who he is, man. It's just that's.
Yeah, I don't think that that would be. I think if that was going to happen, I feel like Billy would just hire a legitimate offensive coordinator from somewhere else, a bigger name that he could get, that he knows and he's worked with in the past. And Russ Callaway probably is going to have his feedback in meetings. I'm sure they all do. And again, Billy isn't a bad offensive coordinator. We still put up 32 points a game last year, which for a defensive-minded guy like me, that's plenty of points to win a football game. Yes. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I understand, like Hirsch said, from the standpoint of wanting Billy to have more free time or more just be the CEO, head coach. I think we're going to get there eventually, but I think we're still at the point where it's a little too early for that to happen. And I don't think that Callaway would be the guy that would get put in that spot. Not now, at least.
Yeah, I think it's good. I agree with you guys, everything you said. I think it's good to have a guy like Callaway, who's called plays before, in the room. Like you said, Billy. I don't think Billy's the stubborn guy. Like, I don't want to hear anything. Like, maybe
absolutely not. I agree with that. Yeah.
Right.
Where Mullen might have been, I think he's the type of guy that would take that input in the game plan. Like, you're part of the game planning for this week. Let's do the game planning for this weekend. What do you see and things like that? But I'm calling the play. Billy will still be calling the plays.
Like they're in the meeting and Callaway walks over to the screen and he's like, well, what if this guy did,
Yeah.
little wrinkles like that, and more minds the better on something like that. And a good coach knows that. A good coach is like, hey, what do you see that could help it? That's why you bring in analysts.
Right.
I mean, it's the exact reason you bring in guys as analysts to say, hey, what do you see here that could give us an advantage? And that's
we hired an offensive coordinator as an analyst. We've got, Casso as an analyst who's in there in the room, and then you've still got Sale who worked in the NFL. That's also in that room. You've got Billy G now, who's been around for years and years and years and seen this stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I think based on offensive wise, as opposed to where we're looking at defense, I think that Billy really brought in a lot of really experienced guys that have done this to help out the offense, because that's where he's at, to kind of take some of the load off of it, to
and
give him
always
some
remember,
more fresher
guys,
ideas.
There's a difference in play design and play call. I mean, a lot of these guys may be sitting in the room coming up with play designs. Billy just ultimately calls them in the situation.
Yeah, a lot, especially with offensive line coaches. With the run game, they usually game plan for the running game, and we're going to double team this guard on this play. I mean, not guard, excuse me, this tackle. Or we're going to kick out and do this. And we're going to stretch the zone this way. That's usually the offensive line coach as far as game plan is concerned. Last question. Justin came back after he saw the news that we hired Billy G and wants to know what do you guys think of Billy G as the hire for wide receiver coach?
Well, like we said, Justin, and I'm sure you listened to the main show already by now as well. We like the hire. I mean, it's not the big flashing lights guy that is like, oh my God, it's not Brian Hartline. We didn't hire Brian Hartline. We hired Billy Gonzalez. We know what he brings to the table. We are excited though to see him under a different coach. I think it's going to be very interesting to watch how Billy G performs at his craft under a coach not named Dan Mullen.
Right, and I think that's the one positive too. We can look at Billy G is we've seen Billy G at his best and we've seen him at his worst, and we know how good his best can be.
All right, and
absolutely.
This last question is from Wes from Respect That Decision for Hirsch and CJ. Wes has his question. How do you guys feel about the Thursday night game against Utah? Florida Gators being on Thursday night.
Oh, God help me.
At least we're not playing in Ireland.
Yeah, Florida State Tech. Look, guys, I understand. Here's the thing. I'm a retiree. It don't matter to me if they play on Tuesday night at 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever. I'm going to be good the next day. But I understand the frustration for a lot of people to have to get up and go to work the next day, or be a responsible adult and take a PTO the next day.
Right. I heard some advice a long time ago. If you call out, and your job fires you, they were going to fire you anyway. They were just waiting on a reason.
Now, I also understand. I'm sorry, CJ. I also understand it for people that want to go that were planning to travel to the game. That I understand. That's a pain.
Definitely.
Because
one positive is midweek flights are cheaper.
And hotels. Well, probably not when the game week, when they know
not when the game comes around to over there and
price hike ups in the land of the Mormon. Look, I understand the frustration for many of you out there. It sucks if that's the case. I hate it for y'all. I really do. I mean, I know some people's routine is, hey man, that's opening game. I'm going. I don't care where it's at. I'm going to be there. And being on a Thursday night sucks. Oh, well, now I got to take off Thursday. I might have to leave early on Wednesday, take off Thursday, take off Friday, and then drive back on my weekend or fly back. I mean, I know most people are going to fly.
Yeah, nobody driving.
Unless you've been chased. Shout out to Ben.
I kind of like it because it was like when we played Miami the week before, even though that was a Saturday, we played Miami the week before, just like week 0. And we were kind of the primetime game. I kind of like it that we start the season against a ranked Utah team. They will be ranked, and we are not, and all eyes will be on us. So I like it to that aspect. And as far as traveling, and the game being during the week, if we make the national championship, I'm just saying, if we make it in 3 years, if DJ Ladway takes us in 2 years, I don't want to say this year, we're gonna play on a Monday. Nobody's gonna complain.
Lord.
And nobody's gonna complain. They're gonna be here. So I don't the travel thing.
Well, I know it sucks, guys, but this is gonna be a new norm every year. Stuff like this is gonna happen.
Yeah.
It seems to be all these networks are trying more and more to get an advantage to get their game to be highlighted. This was a Pac-12 network decision. I know that both ADs signed off on the contract. I get the hate towards Scott about agreeing to this, but you're going to see more and more of this happening. And it's just the college football world we live in now, where the rankings and being able to isolate your game into its own bracket is the thing.
Yeah, I mean, and I get to, like, you got to think about, like, how many years ago was this signed? 5, 6 years ago, this home and home was signed.
Before Napier was in town, for sure.
I mean, yeah. So, like, this was like done years and years ago. We're playing on a Thursday night. I don't even think, aside from like the ACC Thursday night game, wasn't ever really a thing. So I don't think this ever even came up as an option or even a thought in anybody's head. I'm not going to attack the administration for this. It doesn't make any sense. They really don't have any control over it. And another thing, looking at least Monday, you got Labor Day, so you get the Monday off.
Yeah.
I mean, my thing is we're probably going to kick off pretty late because we are playing on the West Side. And I don't know. I'm just going to take that Friday off and just join my 4-day weekend.
Look,
and just
at least you've got plenty of advance notice to get that PTO day in.
That's right.
I mean, let's look at it at a positive.
PTO,
I mean, you put
prepare
it
the others.
far out. The boss is like, well, I didn't know. Well, yes, you did. It's been in for 6 months.
That's right. I'm not asking. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah,
PTO, prepare the others. That's what we're doing.
All right. Okay, guys, thank you all for the questions that you put on the Facebook group for us. We really appreciate that. Next week, make sure y'all, if you're listening in at home and you see this, jump on our Facebook group or check our Twitter page at Respect Our DCN, and drop us a question under our weekly questionnaire about questions for Pod of the People. We'd really appreciate it. And now we're going to jump into our community question, guys. We put this out there every week, different topic every week. This week's community question was, what's the biggest college football what if? Now, this isn't the greatest Gator what if, even though I know this is Gators podcast and most of y'all are going to put it that way. And that's fine. Because if all college football that revolves around your life is just part of Gators football, hey, man, that's okay by me. Sounds pretty good to me. So we're going to jump right into some of the responses from this week and maybe banter around some of them as we bring them up. The first one comes from our boy Sauce. Sauce, shout out to you, buddy. Thank you always for your support. Biggest what if, Carlos Dunlap's 2009 DUI right before the SEC championship game. I know that's a huge what if to a lot of people. And Carlos Dunlap was a monster. Absolutely, he was a monster. That Bama team was whooping our ass anyway, I got a feeling.
That 09 SEC game is just a bunch of what ifs. I mean, it's all
my whole thought process on that goes back to the year before we beat them up, and Saban wasn't losing that football game. I think Saban spent the whole year prepping for that game.
I think our whole offensive year that year was messed up with Adazio being the offensive coordinator. So
and Percy being gone, we just learned ourselves.
Yeah, we didn't look good on offense that whole year with Mullen going to Mississippi State and Adazio running things. So I don't think we had a chance either way.
But it's always going to be a what if, man. I mean, that's a good one though. It's a good one to ponder. Lucas P puts there, what if the Dolphins clear Drew Brees' shoulder and Nick Saban stays in the NFL longer or goes somewhere besides Bama when he comes back to college? I mean, that's a tremendous what if. It goes right there. If you saw our graphic, the graphic that we made for this one had Nick Saban in his LSU polo. What if he had not gone to the NFL and he stayed at LSU? I mean, the Nick Saban coaching decisions has definitely shaped college football as we know it. There's no doubt about it. But Lucas P, to your point, I mean, Bama would have obviously had to have moved on to somebody else.
Who was the guy that Alabama, was it Rich Rod? Was Rich Rodriguez the guy that was going to take the spot? If Saban
I believe it was. He was serious. I believe it was pretty much done when they talked Saban into it.
Right. That's what I remember. So, like, look at Rich Rod's massive failure at Michigan, and picture that for Alabama. Alabama was floundering. I mean, they were it was a revolving door. Like, you talk about, like, if we're talking about what ifs, what about Mike Price? He went over there and didn't even make it to spring. So, I mean, yeah, that's a huge one.
All right. Skip Henderson asked, what if Cam Newton had not stolen the laptop and gotten kicked out of Florida? I think this is pretty much the resounding high percentage leader in the clubhouse of what ifs in college football history. And it's certainly mine as well. It always has been. Because the snowball effect of that. If Cam stays, does Urban leave? If Urban doesn't leave, how long does Florida continue to just dominate? And are where we are today, in the cycle of exchanging head coaches every 3 to 4 years, if that happens? I mean, it's a tremendous catalyst for Florida football.
We're talking like Cam was in 2010. He's a golden ticket of a national championship. You're not losing a national championship.
We had the defense. We had the defense already set. So
our team was supremely more talented than Auburn.
Yes,
I mean, for sure. And
but
you have Cam,
and he's exactly in the mold of doing what Tebow did. Now, the question I pose to y'all is: we just said something about Adazio being here.
You'd have been gone
without Mullen here to call the plays. Though, does it matter?
I don't think it does.
I don't think Adazio stays.
I'm just saying that the biggest what if that what if has layers to it. And one of the what ifs is, do you have the offensive coordinator on the staff to take advantage of what Cam brought to the table at that point?
Because Urban fired the other offensive coordinator when Tom Herman left. He had another offensive coordinator. He fired him and got Ryan Day. I don't think he would have let her die if he saw. He's the type of coach that is not what we saw with Mullen, too loyal. That I think he would have gotten rid of Adazio and say, "Hey, you be the offensive coordinator." When did Adazio leave and go to Boston
Adazio left
College?
Anyway. I mean, Adazio
went to Boston College.
He went to Boston College right after. And then then we got Charlie Weiss, who was brought in to try to run a pro style quarterback with Brantley. And that would have been a totally different hire.
That's what I'm saying. Urban. It's a weird dynamic, and I pose to y'all a different scenario of that. Was the heat already too heavy on Urban for it to have even mattered? Because Urban was under some heat.
I don't think it matters if you win, because I'm under the belief of winning cures all. The reason Urban's heat got turned up so high is he didn't win the championship in 2009. And then you have the 2010 season, which is historically bad. It was bad. It wasn't good. It was like, this doesn't look right. This isn't the Florida team. So you've had a losing season, or not a losing season, but a bad season, not an Urban Meyer season. And you don't have Cam. You're looking at John Brantley for another year, and he hasn't been it. You can't find a coach. You've got kids piling in with different issues legally. You're having issues legally. I think that if you're winning in that time, though, nobody looks at it crossways. Kind of like what George is doing now. They're winning, so nobody really cares. If Kirby Smart had went 6-6 or 7-5, and you roll these issues in, that seat's going to get warm. And he's going to be looking for a way out. But while you're winning, it kind of masks over it because we saw it.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I just want to pose all the angles here because there was a lot going on at that time in multiple different areas, not just the quarterback room. Obviously, we know. I mean, and we're looking at the Netflix special coming out whenever they finish it up about all that happened in that era. I mean, you got what was going on with Aaron Hernandez, kids getting arrested with
Ray McDonald.
Yeah,
McDonald
I mean,
had his issues.
people getting beat up at Subway over sandwiches.
Yeah.
I mean, trunks full of guns. I mean, lots of stuff going on in Gainesville. But hey, man, we were winning. And like you said, at the end of the day, a lot of stuff is forgiven if your team is winning. One last question on Twitter. Excuse me. One last question on Twitter from our boy Justin Wood. Like I said, Justin, you are everywhere. What if Ernest Graham never gets hurt in 2001?
Chip.
Guys, that's a two-parter too, because
Spurrier might not be.
I think somebody else asked the other half of that because of the 9/11.
9/11 was the other what if of that season.
You moved Tennessee. I think it might have been a Facebook question, but I saw somebody ask that question. Yeah. Go ahead and tell them.
Yeah, it was from Jay Stubbs. He said, "What if Tennessee game didn't get moved because of 9/11?" And
yeah, I mean that season.
I'm gonna say his second part because we answered that too. He said, "What if Mullen was the OC of the 09 team?" So he had two parts, but we kind of covered that too. But yeah, if that game doesn't get moved,
I don't want to say that fate was against us, because that is an insult to everyone that lost their lives and had their lives changed in 9/11. So please do not ever take it as that. It was just terrible luck. I mean, it was terrible luck. But that season, I mean, and I know a lot of people think back on that season as a what if. That was just a wild time, man, and sports didn't seem to matter quite as much in the moment if you lived through it.
Looking back at it, could you imagine that 01 Florida team playing that 01 Miami team in the national championship game?
It would have been fantastic.
Dude, that would have been a
fantastic game.
You got a rivalry as the national championship game? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I lived it. 96, baby.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Nothing was ever better than 19-year-old me sitting there watching Florida State get routed in the national championship.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna do the ones from Facebook. Justin Wood, he says, "What if Steve Spurrier never goes to the NFL?"
Man, I don't know. I think time catches up with Steve in a lot of ways. Steve would have had to adapt, and we saw that at South Carolina.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. He did,
but did the NFL cause that? No. I mean, did going to the NFL give him a different take on things? It's just one of those things. You just never really know what experiences in life changed a man's way of thinking. But I mean, if he doesn't leave, I think we keep firing on all cylinders for quite a few years there, obviously.
Yeah, but
then do you get 06 and 08?
Yeah, and then too, you look at like what situation Florida State had to deal with Bobby Bowden staying, and to the point where Bobby Bowden overstayed, and it's hard to fire a guy like a Steve Spurrier if he was there when you need to, because you've got a guy that you're like, man, he's done everything. We've named the field after him. He's made us nationally relevant for the first time in program history. Then you're kind of stuck trying to figure out what to do when he starts to lose a step. And Steve didn't lose a step until years later, though. But like I said, it's just a hard situation to gauge.
Yeah, that Steve was what, 10 years in then at 2001? 10 years in, 11 years in, and then he was still winning at South Carolina in 2012, 13, 14. So, maybe 12 or 13. It might have been 13. So, so he had another 10 years in him. So it would have been nice. Ted Fitzgeorge says, "What if Tim Tebow hadn't returned for his senior year?"
Ooh, that's rough.
Maybe Cam doesn't steal a laptop and he starts the year over Brown. That's a good question. I don't know. He wasn't. Of course, Tim didn't do well in the NFL, but he wasn't ready.
Cam had already left in 09. He was at He was already gone.
Community college.
Yeah, I'm saying like if that 09 year, because he left after we won the championship, but maybe if doing I don't know, maybe Urban doesn't get rid of Cam if Tebow says, "Hey, this is gonna be my last year."
Urban didn't have a choice on Cam.
It wasn't Urban? Or maybe you
No,
would have
that was
fought
I
the
don't think it
student
was.
body. That was the student board and the committee that got rid of.
Oh, I thought
Yeah, I don't think if Urban
Well,
had
I-
a really
I was thinking
if
the
Urban
reason
had
he
his say, Cam wouldn't have left. He would have figured out. I mean, we dealt with much worse than throwing a laptop out of a
yeah,
window.
that's what I was saying. I was thinking maybe because of the Brantley, he didn't really fight hard enough because he was like, well, I still got Brantley here. This is from Reggie Canazzo. He says, we already covered this. What if Cam didn't steal the laptop? Tim Scott says, what if Ray Graves doesn't get pushed off the sidelines for Dickey?
We're going way back. I wasn't alive.
This is a Hurst question.
Man, I don't even remember all of that, to be very
Graves
honest
had a
with you.
successful season. I do remember that. He got pushed out for Doug Dickey. And a lot of the players were not happy with that. I do remember seeing something on the a few of the documentaries, but like I said, it's so far back from me. I can't really speak to that. I do know that Ray Graves was really well at one point. I mean, we had
that either too. Last question from Will Watterson. He says, "What if Urban wasn't so effed up in the head at Florida?"
Urban wasn't effed. That's just Urban. That's who Urban is. I mean, we got more evidence of that, when he was with the Jaguars and whatnot.
And
Urban's just look. Let's put this out there. Most successful coaches aren't great human beings all the time.
Right.
I'm not gonna say that some aren't. I mean, everyone that's ever really met Nick Saban and knows Nick Saban says Nick is a really, really nice guy. But guess what? Nick Saban cheats. Nick Saban cheats. Guess what? Kirby Smart cheats. Guess what? I mean, Bobby Bowden cheated like hell. I mean, the good head coaches do. And they're not always the nicest guys. But to be a head coach, look, my daddy was a head coach and my grandfather was a high school coach in Georgia for 30 years. Head coaches ain't always great. You can't be a good guy all the time. You got to have a nasty streak to you to have that job.
I mean, there's a reason why guys like Rush Probst was successful in Georgia. He's he wasn't liked. People didn't like Rush Probst, but Rush Probst won. I mean, you look at even in basketball, you look at Bobby Knight. People didn't like Bobby Knight. Bobby Knight was a jerk. But
Mike Krzyzewski, same thing.
He won. These guys win. And I think that there's a point. Now, when you stop winning, like I said earlier,
then it matters.
Then it starts to really be like, okay, well, this guy's been a jerk the whole time.
But it gives you an excuse then to move on.
Right.
It gives you a grounds.
Right.
Bobby Knight reached that point. Perfect example. Bobby Knight, when Bobby Knight quit winning, Indiana found out, it was like, oh, well, he was doing this, that, and this. We'll get rid of him now. You have grounds.
Right.
It's just the nature of the beast. I mean, the adage nice guys finish last is very accurate in college football coaching.
Agreed.
Guys, we appreciate all the questions, man. As always, great interactive discussion. We appreciate that so much. It's fun to do. We like these what-if questions, and everyone has a different opinion, and we love talking about that. There are no wrong answers. So it's just, we really appreciate the interactions with you guys. We hope to do even more next week. So make sure when you see that questionnaire pop up in the Facebook group or on Twitter, drop us a question that you want answered. Or if you see that community question, jump in there. Not sure what it's going to be yet. We'll get that figured out sometime this weekend. When you see that community question hit, you're like, man, I got a good idea for this. Throw it in there, man. We'll read it just like we just read all of these. It's fun to talk about. So, guys, that's going to do it for this week's Pod of the People.
Answer?
What?
We're not going to answer?
Oh, our what is? Well, man, hot dang. CJ just put the brakes on us, man. I already said mine was Cam. I guess that's why I just kept cruising.
Yeah, mine will be recent. I'll go recent if I feel, because nobody said it. I'm not going to say one that everybody else said. Will Greer doesn't get busted for PEDs. I feel like that championship defense we had, back-to-back years, we had championship defense, and we don't lose to LSU that year because Treon almost beat LSU that year. Then we went on the 3-game losing streak, losing to FSU, Bama in the SEC championship game, and the bowl game. So I feel
even then, Greer stays another seat, probably here another year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Back to back, we had championship defenses back to back years. So him with that, all we needed was a a semblance of a quarterback. With those, we were going to the playoffs. I think the playoffs were 4 teams those years. So we ended up winning the college football playoffs.
Then you open up the box of how long is Jim McElwain in here? If you have that kind of success,
yeah,
how
he was
long do you
figuring out
have
recruiting though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I don't disagree with you there. I think that Jim McElwain, until the death threats kind of
Oh,
came
yeah.
in,
I
I
mean,
think he
you
was
think about
trying
that.
to get his traction.
Will Greer's on campus. Jamar Chase may stay. It's a lot of what ifs that
Matt
go down
Corral
that
might
rabbit
be
hole.
coming in. It was a big deal. But mine, as far as biggest what if, is what if in the mid 1980s SMU doesn't get the death penalty? Where are we at in a college football landscape where an SMU is still relevant? What does that affect out there out west? We lost a whole conference pretty much because SMU went to pot. You don't even have the Southwestern Conference anymore.
It was that's a big deal that most people that follow college football now don't even think about.
Right. You lost conferences, they merged. And like I said, SMU was a monster of a football team, even going back to the days of Doak Walker playing for SMU. So, that's a team that really fell off. They haven't recovered still today. So what does that look like? You're talking the 1980s teams. We're all talking about all the great teams in the 80s when you look at, and even the early 90s. What happens with the Florida States and the Nebraskas if SMU is still pumping on all cylinders? So to me, my biggest what if is what if they don't put the hammer down on SMU?
There you have it, guys. CJ, not old enough to know about Ray Graves, but old enough to remember SMU getting the death penalty in the 80s. Oh, man, we love it. Guys, as always, thank you for tuning into this. Like I said before at the intro, if you're here and you haven't already, hey, man, be a good guy and subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it. Make sure you drop a like on the video, guys. It helps us a great deal, like I said also. And drop us a comment, man. Drop us a question for next week. Whatever you got on your mind, put it in there.
Yeah, but please, somebody give me a baseball question. I'm begging. I'm on my knees.
Yes,
I'm pleading.
CJ a baseball.
Give me a baseball question. I'm begging.
Except
please.
Don't ask him how long it'll take Wyatt Langford's nut to grow back. Okay?
I don't know that. If I knew that, I'd be making a lot more money.
All right, Gator Nation. We love y'all, man. We appreciate all your questions and your interactions, and we will talk to you next week. Go Gators.
Go Gators.
Go Gators.